So I want to review the episode Overlogging from South Park. And in this episode, the internet breaks down and a lot of the South Park characters move out west to get their fair share of internet. And when I review these episodes, I'm not more about telling you guys what happened. I'm more about just reviewing the themes of this episode because there are a lot of themes in this. That first of all, it opens with Randy with Shelly Marsh telling Randy's husband telling like Stan to get off the internet, telling their daughter to get off the internet, and then also telling Randy to get off the internet. So automatically you're kind of seeing what they're talking about first, which is she's kind of like the mother parent in the family, like how Marge Simpson is, where she treats Randy more like a kid. And sometimes with internet obsession, you have that too, where you have one parent being the adult or holding everybody together because the other person's kind of immature, has their addictions. Internet overlogging is an addiction. The next thing is that with the lack of internet, people go into mass panic. Like people fight each other. People like just grab each other by the shoulders. Like Randy does that to Gerald, his friend, and then everybody's going to Starbucks and everybody's like panicking and freaking out because it's really just a allegory. Because people think that if social media and the internet's kind of dead, it's going to be a worldwide panic because it's like we're going to go back to the 90s or the early 2000s where you couldn't be really in touch with people. Like, once somebody's out of your life, they're out of your life and you didn't know what happened because you're not interconnected. And then also because, YouTube and other things, stuff that we relied on. And then there's some people like me who like doing YouTube videos as a way to express my thoughts and as like a form of art therapy. You don't have that luxury anymore. It create a panic for people who find healthy ways to use the internet and even healthy therapeutic ways. And then there's people who are very, very addicted. And then also the other thing too is that when they move out west, it's a reference to the Grapes of Wrath and also the Grapes of Wrath. And then there's another John Steinbeck story of Mice and Men as well, because they're moving out west to get some internet. And that's an interesting thing that they're doing. And I think that what they're trying to do is that people are so addicted to the internet that they'll go wherever to kind of get it. Like they're mining for oil or they're in the Depression looking for... Because what happened during the Depression was people moved out west and to other areas of the country because that's when that's when FDR had the New Deal. And then that's kind of when he was like, saying here are work camps and we'll treat you right, we'll feed you right, and you will be making money and that be that. But it's just saying that, people are so desperate for internet, look at how the government has everybody by the balls. And also, too, when it's being rationed, they make a joke about it as well. There's so little internet, you only get 40 seconds a day. So, and sometimes they do that at real rehabilitation centers. So, I think there's people who want to get better from a crack addiction or drug addiction. They may give you a little bit of drugs to kind of like, wane you off of it. And sometimes people use it to feed their addiction, or sometimes people will be like, okay, well, I'll never get better because, that's just... It's helping me get like at least one high instead of actually solving the problem. And then there's the other thing that happens with it that is that some people are just willing to get it whatever way, even if it's like the government giving just a little bit. So it does become a black market. And the other example of a black market is when Randy is addicted to porn and he goes and he buys he rents computer usage. And they show him crappy illustrations of what's going on. Obviously, there's a big joke about Randy sneaking into the computer that they had and jerking off to different types of porn, and then just seeming all over them. There are two reasons for that. Like, obviously, they wanted to be shock value. This is South Park. You got to live up to South Park. And also, the other thing too is that that's also what happens with people who are addicted to porn or have other addictions. Bestiality is illegal in some countries. Sometimes watching people go to the bathroom on each other as a sexual fetish, in some countries that's illegal, and in some countries, if the government knows you're watching that, like in Russia or even in North Korea, you'd be executed for watching that stuff. I'm not sure about in Russia, but there are some places you watch certain types of porn, you will be executed. And then, as Randy said, once you watch two Japanese girls puking in each other's mouths, you really can't go back to Playboy. It does another thing. What would happen if There's people who watch, more and more racy porn, and then they say, let's get into child pornography, or let's take a quote from the Serbian film, newborn porn. You know, sometimes the porn addiction and the overlogging addiction kind of motivates people to look at more extreme stuff, like on the dark web that they shouldn't be seeing. Like, because there's videotapes. Because I remember like, in high school, there was this kid who bought a videotape on the dark web of a soldier being executed, by a U.S. soldier being executed. So you don't know what you're getting, but also if you don't control your addictions, sometimes you look at worse and worse stuff. You know, and in some countries like Britain, bestiality is banished because, I remember like in the 80s, there was a story about this woman who would film herself having sex with animals, and that made a lot of money in the English mafia and all that stuff. So, sometimes if you don't watch your addictions or you don't teach yourself self control, you eventually get to a point where you're over relying on it, and sometimes you go more down the rabbit hole and find worse stuff until you get in trouble. So, self control and personal accountability, and just also understanding that there are some things like internet that can always go away is important because time is limited. We live in a sensitive universe. Anything can happen. We're Our planet's going 500,000. Our solar system is moving 500,000 miles an hour through space. What are the odds that an asteroid's going to hit us? What are the odds that there could be an electromagnetic storm on the sun that can shut off all the power in the all of our computers? Nothing lasts forever. That could be the internet. And sometimes what happens in human history is that something's happened to remove it from a good age to a stone age. You look at the bombing of Hiroshima and how that was kind of a very well developed city and it had a lot of great stuff. And one bomb just brought it back, years and years to to a wasteland, and it took years and years to kind of rebuild it. So things can always be taken away from us, and we always have to understand that, and that should be motivation for us to kind of control what we have and be conservative with what we have instead of just over relying and never really learning our lessons. And even like with Randy's speech at the end, like his message was really just to be more conservative with the internet. But really, who's gonna listen to his message? Who's watching this episode? Most people won't. We'll still be like the same type of internet junkie. So it's also trying to teach the message of how if there's people who are trying to teach us to have more moderation, more than likely you're not going to be listened to because that's not a human response nowadays. We're very entitled. We're very overindulgent. So it's like, as I said, it's meant to be a joke, but it's also making a joke of the fact that nobody's going to listen to the morality thing, which is learning moderation and the consequences of getting addicted to something. And getting addicted to something is sometimes your own choice. And when you get and when you don't have enough of it, it's easy for governments to manipulate you to a point where you're moving to get it, to a point where your family is fighting, to the point where you are a man-child, to the point where, you talk about what you learn and other people are not learning. So, let's all have moderation over the internet and other types of addictions that we have.